Hello, and welcome to Season 2 of the Trade Up Podcast. I'm Lisa Brandt, and this week, business owner and co-author of the book Trade Up, John Finan, and I talk about trades and employment news. An Ontario company that teaches trades says its students are starting younger than they used to. Where do you find jobs in the trades? LinkedIn? Indeed? John weighs in on how his company recruits tradespeople. Have you heard of NEET, a young person with no employment, education, or training? We'll explain. But first, do boomers think younger workers are lazy? The answer might not surprise you, but the reason probably will.
I look at it a little bit differently, Lisa. I suspect that's just a self-preservation tactic that we have as individuals to make ourselves feel as good as we need to. Like, I think I'm better looking than everybody else, too.
Okay.
So, and that's not the case. So it likes to look at younger people and think that they're lazy, because actually what I'm really saying is I think I'm a harder working person. So I look at everybody and think they're lazy. That's just the default position that delusional man has. But I do know your sense, and I heard something on a podcast a week or so ago, and somebody said they've been tracking this for almost 100 years, and every single generation says that about the coming up generation. And I remember one of my high school friends, his father had a great job at a big company, and I thought that would be a great spot to go. And my friend had said to me, my dad didn't say you, but he thinks all my friends are lazy. So he won't actually ever recommend any of us to get a job at that company, him included. And, you know, when I think about his career, that man's career, he's passed away now, but I think about what he did in his career. And if I just looked at what my friend and I did, not even any of the other friends, I think that company would have been really well served having us. But his perception was, because what he saw was a couple of 15 to 18-year-olds. And let's face it, what we would have shown him wouldn't have been anything that would be impressive.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have been on a professional scale in any way either, right? You're hanging out, you're watching TV, whatever, however he sees you. You're coming over for dinner, your elbows are on the table, whatever.
Yeah. So I'm driving home from the gym today. So I go to this early morning heated fitness class. So the class starts at 5:30, ends at 6:30. So I come out of the house. You have to get there by 5:15 to get your spot. I want a spot in the room, so my mat's in the right spot. So anyway, I'm in literally my t-shirt, my shorts, and not flip-flops, but regular just shoes. And I've only got, 30 meters to go from my truck to get into the studio. Absolutely blizzardly cold. When you're in the studio for an hour, it's really hot. I used to put on a jacket or something to walk back to the car because that just seemed like a grown-up thing to do. But what I actually realized is all it did was just get all this sweat on this thing. So the 30 meters I had to wear it plus the drive home, and it had to go to the wash. And I'm like, what? And it was actually the sweatshirt, Lisa, you bought me with Port Stanley on it.
Oh, cool.
And it's okay to wash it, but not 4 times a week. So I just go. And as I'm driving home this morning, I believe it was CBC, they were asking teenagers in Winnipeg. So we thought it was cold at minus 23 here in London. My suspicion would be, that's a mild day in Winnipeg. So they were interviewing these teenagers who were, from the way they were describing it, standing outside of their high school. And they were in various states of teenager dress. Like one young girl's got her jacket open, and the guy said, "Why's your jacket open?" She goes, "I don't actually know. It just seems like what you do at my age." Another guy's in running shoes, and he goes, "Yeah, it's pretty stupid. My mom does. She thinks it's a dumb idea. It probably is, but that's what I'm wearing." And they all kind of admitted, except for one guy, of course, that they were doing something that was foolish, but they just continued to do it. And because that's what you do when you're a teenager. You just sort of, You want to be on the edge. You want to stand out as something that you can show people, because the outside is easy to show. What's going on inside is very, very difficult to show a person what you're really up to. So, and we tend to keep that private.
Well, it's a mess in there too, right? I mean, you haven't got anything figured out, and yet you desperately want to show like you do have it figured out.
That doesn't change much, by the way, for some of us. And but I think what's different is perhaps as you get a little bit older, you're kind of willing to accept that, hey, you know what, I don't actually have everything figured out, but that's okay.
I have found personally, and I found among people that I know who I consider smart, that the older they get, the less they know for certain.
There's a great saying, and I think it was probably Mark Twain that said this, if I remember correctly. It goes like this: it's not what you don't know that'll get you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just isn't true. And I constantly go through that thought process. Is this actually true? We just all believe it as common sense. If you said, oh, well, you got to follow the golden rule, well, maybe that is part of our problem, is we do things like that. So,
well, there's another one. Always listen to your elders. I do not believe that at all. You pick and choose the elders you listen to. You don't just blanket listen to them because some are full of beans. There has to be more nuance to some of those things. One of the things I was reading this week is a book by a psychologist from the US, and she looked at boomers versus Gen Z, which is like 1995 to 2009, I believe. And the differences between the worlds that we each grew up in. But the younger ones think we had it so easy because, oh, house prices were cheap. Yeah, it was 18% interest in the 80s. Like we all have our things that we have to deal with. They've never known a world without a smartphone. And their socialization, because a lot of them, not all, but many had helicopter parents who hovered over them, and their socialization was waiting for a like on their Instagram photo, where we were let loose like cattle in the streets and then told to come home when the street light came on. So sometimes our perceptions of each other are a little bit skewed just because of that.
I feel really sorry for the young people that have sort of been brought up on that dopamine hit that looking at your phone gets. And I see people that are in generations that are even older than that doing the same thing because, let's face it, the cell phone companies, the apps, the social media companies have figured out that they make money based on the amount of time that you spend looking at their stuff. So whether it's the font, whether it's the color, whether it's just feeling something in your hand constantly, it just gives them a good feeling. And one would say maybe that's not a bad thing, but you know what? In the absence of it, it certainly is a bad thing. If you have to go to work and not look at your phone 14 times every 60 minutes, yeah, that's going to be a challenge for you. You probably have nothing good to think about. So anyway, I feel sorry for them. People your age and my age, Lisa, will know people that look at their cell phones far too much, choreograph their lives. And yeah.
And I've tried very hard not to now. Like it has to be an effort and it has to be a mindful thing that you do. I leave it in another part of the house. I got rid of some apps, but it's hard. It is addictive. And it was designed to be that way.
Yeah.
We're being manipulated, but they know what they're doing.
We were always being manipulated. I don't think there's ever been a time I was reading a book about sort of the history between, if you started in the 1930s, so the run up to the Second World War, right up to, say, the end of the Vietnam War, the propaganda that people believed, it's just shocking. I think it's just perpetuating the same myths that we've always had to deal with. So I think in 100 years, people look at us and say, yeah, you're really no different. You might have had cell phones, you might have had smart things, but, you were suckers like the rest of us.
Yeah. I read something from Neil deGrasse Tyson, the astrophysicist, who said that he predicts by the year 2050, there'll be no internet. He thinks it's basically going to turn in on itself because of misinformation and disinformation, that it'll get to the point where nobody believes anything and people will just start leaving and going back to, books and conversations and finding things out for themselves. I hope we're smart enough for that. I don't know if the end of the internet's actually going to happen, but Neil deGrasse Tyson is a lot smarter than me, so I'm certainly not going to argue with him.
That's a good world to think about. And 2050 actually is not even all that long away. So,
I won't be here.
Yeah. Oh, you will. Yeah. And you'll be gone.
I don't know.
That's about all we'll be able to use is the internet at that point. Put our VR headphones on and sit in our wheelchairs and pretend we're on the beach. Hope they don't get rid of the internet for us old fogies.
There's apparently a whole cohort of young people. This is reported in the Financial Times. They're called NEETs, not in education, employment, or training. They have just opted out. And part of this is because of the rise of being an influencer on social media. You might not make as much money, but you get to do what you want. You can have all this free time and just put videos up or whatever it is, however they do it. And, I accidentally became an influencer when I got a notification from Facebook that I was getting a bonus of $3.12, I believe, for my engagement.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And it's happened several times. And once it gets up to, I think, $50, it'll be a payout. So I'm looking forward to the year 2028. This is why the short-term banning of TikTok was such a big deal, because some people make their income that way. But these NEETs, not in employment, not in education, not in training, that seems a little fringy to me.
When I read that stat, I thought that's probably not true. 20%, like 1 in 5. Now, okay, so a 15, 16-year-old, I assume we're talking about American. You said it was Washington Post?
Your Financial Times.
Financial Times.
Yeah, and it's actually a global thing, allegedly.
Then that's easy to say that's probably true. There's probably places that don't have education past whatever, and if say, well, okay, certain genders don't get education. So I don't know. I think that's probably a statistic that we should probably just pitch out. If you said somebody between 21 and 25 that's not in education, I would say they should be working or they should be going to school.
Yeah.
And if they've opted out for that, I would say for most of them, it's temporary, because at some point you're not going to have any food. Your mom's only going to feed you for so long.
You can't live in the basement forever. And how would you afford a VR headset if you're not working or doing something? Where's the sense of pride in doing your own thing? Again, I'm projecting the way I grew up onto people who didn't grow up the way I did. So,
it's funny you say about having a sense of pride. So I'm a little bit of a watch collector. I don't have many watches, but I know what I have and I know why I have them, and I know the ones that I still covet, and it's a sickness, I know. But early on in my addiction there, I'm talking to one of my nephews who was, I think, probably about 15 at the time, and he was a clever young guy, and he recognized that I was wearing a different watch each time. So he started asking me about that, and I showed up with one that was worth a bit of money. And he said, I really hope my parents buy me a Rolex when he might have said 21 or something, graduate high school, graduate university, something like that. I said to him, let's hope they don't, because the whole purpose of looking down on your wrist and seeing something that is god-awfully expensive is knowing that you earned it. The very first expensive watch I bought as a treat to myself a few years into business. I think he got that. I think he got that, I get it. This isn't just bling that you put on that you can show off somebody bought you. It's actually something that is really just for you. And the good thing about watch collecting or wearing watches is 99% of the people don't even notice, which is exactly what most of us want. We just want to wear something that just we know.
Otherwise, you'd have a big chain around your neck. You know what I mean? And it'd be like, look at me. That's not what it's about. This is
That's
something
right. It's more
for you.
subtle.
Yeah. I don't think that would suit you at all. A report came out of Windsor from this group of companies that trains people for skilled trades. And they say that they're seeing a lot of younger people come in. The company is called Highmark. They're saying that they're getting a lot of people coming in at 18, 19, and 20, where 30 years ago, the average age would have been 29 or 30. And 29 or 30 seems, I don't know, what do you think? Maybe they've tried another thing or two, or what happens if you come in later? And I wonder why they're younger now.
Yeah, there's probably not a lot wrong with coming in later. I mean, 60s probably too late, maybe 50s even getting there if you're going to go through that 4 or 5 year apprenticeship. Your runway after your certification just isn't that long. But 30 is certainly not unusual. I was 24 at the time, and I thought I was old. When I got to finding out a lot of the other guys that had started their apprenticeships at the same time as me, my age was probably about average of the time. There was older guys for sure, but I certainly wasn't the oldest. There might have been one teenager, and it would be a second career for sure. Let's hope it was. I mean, I don't think back then you'd spend 4 years at university, 4 years working, and then at 30 decide to get into a trade. You probably did something where you got hurt. You and I went through much more of a turbulent economy. Like unemployment levels have been good and steady for the last 15 years. You want a job, there's a job to be had. Is it a good job? No, it's not. But there's always been crappy jobs out there. It's just kind of where you start to trade up for a better career. So in that sense, it doesn't surprise me that they were older, but I'm happily surprised to hear that number. And I think that represents that we're making some progress, Lisa. People are actually hearing the message that getting into the trades early, staying away from debt-based education is starting to make sense. And I don't think it's necessarily the young people, although I think the permission that they're getting from their parents and the adult influencers that this is actually a good way to go is having that impact and allowing them the freedom to say, yeah, why would I go to university? Like even in the 80s, I went to university, and I think I'm not sure I would change it because of the butterfly effect. Some of my relationships that I've had for the 40 years since they booted me out, I wouldn't want to trade them for anything. And that's where I found them. But did I actually learn any valuable skills? In fact, I didn't. Probably more humiliated than anything. If I think back on it, it was probably a negative sum for me because I went into university thinking I was at the top of the world. And when I came out, I was not just humbled, like in a good way. I was defeated and deflated. And it was just, oh my gosh, it would have just taken one bad decision to put me on a different career path before I found the trades. And I'm happily to hear these 18 to 20-year-olds are just jumping in with both feet, because I know, that it takes a few years to get certified. You're going to work with your tools in your hands and your body at the time that you're most capable of doing that, which is that 20 to 40 age group. And then they will have so much experience in whatever field, whether it's electrician, building bridges, programming, building automation systems. They can run companies, they can train more people, they can teach, they can do all of the supply chain things that need to be done in that industry and make tremendous amounts of money and have great job security. So I'm super happy to hear that.
Good. Speaking of building bridges, that was just about the only thing that made the top 25 growing jobs for 2025. But it's according to LinkedIn. If you were going to post a job for someone in a trade, would you go to LinkedIn or would you go to Indeed or something?
That's a great question, because we post on both of those, and it really does depend on the job category. So LinkedIn is exactly where we went. We were looking for our building integration specialists. So they're basically computer programmers for building automation systems. Awesome spot to go. LinkedIn's got a really robust way to search people, but we haven't had any success to find actual, like if I need a plumber, a sheet metal mechanic, electrician, LinkedIn's not the place to go. Indeed had been the place. And in fact, we just got a resume in today from an ad that we placed just probably yesterday, actually. So I was kind of very glad to hear that. But where we're at, and I got to think that most contractors at exactly the same part. First thing we do is ask our staff, who do you know who's in the trade? We pay $5,000 to them for a referral that turns to a hire. So good money for them.
Yeah.
Give it to them. But we'll pay significantly more than that to a recruiting firm. So basically everybody we're looking for is fully employed. And what we're looking for is somebody that's not happy in the spot that they're at, or they're looking to make a jump into a higher role, perhaps running jobs, management, project management, estimating, these kinds of things. And if the company that they're working at is just not growing at the speed that it needs to put them into that job sooner, we're happy to pick them up, because we can put them to work doing those things when we have openings. So you pay a god-awful amount of money to the recruiters to do it, but it's their job to suss out the market and find the candidates and then lure them into an interview with us where we can pitch our company and what we do. And if that's a fit for them, great.
Yeah, I've been approached by one of those recruiters who wanted me to become a financial planner.
Oh, right.
You ever see me with a calculator? It's like a goat staring at thunder. It's not really good.
Thanks for listening to the Trade Up Podcast. We have some inspiring young people joining us this season, and we're looking for more. If that's you, or you know someone who's pursuing a career in the trades, please email John at tradeupbook.ca. On behalf of John Finan, I'm Lisa Brandt. Our engineer is Andrew Rosser. We'll talk again soon.